Fantasy races! Woo!
Woo! Yes. That is precisely what we are here to discuss today. Because what makes a good fantasy race? What fantasy races withstand the test of time and show up in the popular culture time and time again? And what others show up once and get made fun of? Let's discuss.
Well, clearly Wizards of the Coast's current attempt to rebrand Orcs as basically Nahua is definitely going to be good and totally is going to stand the test of time.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Never mind the fact that the Nahua, they're not even doing the actual Nahua, which were incredibly warlike and had a extremely complex code of honor. And there's a reason why most of their high gods are warrior gods. But once again, that's neither here nor there.
Instead, I need to make an aside. I'm still salty about this. I've been complaining nonstop for the last 3 days, but you know what? I dragged the bros through it, so I'm dragging all of you at home through with it. Netflix needs to stop existing because holy crap!
Oh, okay. This is where you're going. I was wondering where you were going with that.
They keep doing it, and it's the same people doing it every single time. This. Okay. You know what? Castlevania on Netflix was good for 2 seasons. They actually did a halfway decent job. And I was willing to accept some of the changes. I was willing to work. I was like, okay, you know what? This isn't 100% accurate to the games. Whatever. They're pressed for time. They don't have Grant. That sucks. Grant's really cool. But you know what? I was willing to ride along. And then it kept going. And it kept getting dumber. And it kept getting worse. And now they've done Devil May Cry. And they did Devil May Cry dirty. Because, oh my god, did you guys know that it's still 2003 and we really don't like the Bush administration because America invades hell because demons are just evolved humans? They literally say this.
No. It's not even that, Snek. It's the fact that America invades hell basically in a thinly veiled allegory to the global war on terror's invasion of Iraq. And don't you know, the hyper-evolved demons are basically the victims in all of this. Even though every single time they show up, they basically murder and eat people. Still.
But guys, the demons, they're just like us, and they're just people, and they can totally be redeemed. No, they can't. You know what makes demons demons? The fact that they're demonic. You know what made... You know what, D&D fanboys? I'm coming for you next. You know what made your overplayed, oversaturated half-demon race interesting? Was that it put them in a position where they could seek redemption because of their human element, but they would be rejected by society. You know what would make a really good concept based on that? A paladin. So how about you stop playing bards and be like, oh, it's so hard wearing skinny jeans and black eyeliner and being a bard. It sucks. It sucks. You're making it suck. Stop making it suck.
I mean, these are the same sort of people who look at the demons in Freerian, which are canonically do not have any sort of social sense of morality. They literally have no conscience. They are textbook sociopaths and inhuman monsters that eat people and go, but this, how dare you? How dare you make something that's irredeemable? It's they're literally called demons.
They're literal, actual demons. What more do you need?
Why are you trying to sympathize with literal, actual demons?
Do you guys remember webcomics?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a webcomic about 20 years ago. It was contemporaneous with 8-Bit Theater. It was called Goblins. And it was basically about a little village of goblins that would just have to deal with the fact that there were level 1 adventurers that would just show up, murder a few of their people, and then just wander through again. And so, and I want to say one of the recurring parties literally was nothing but a bunch of quote unquote redeemed drow. At which point the leader of the goblin village basically made the point that it's I don't understand what's going on in the Underdark, but there literally is nothing but drow who are I am so much better. I have seen the light. I'm going to be a good guy, and I'm chaotic good now. He's like, I don't know what's going on down there, but it's really messed up because all of them are just preachy and maudlin. And it's like, yeah, that basically is like the observation that they're making about like not all evil races. It's like that's been done. That's been done. That's been done to death, even to the point that like a really crappy webcomic 20 years ago was making this observation. R.A. Salvatore is not cutting edge anymore, guys. You're not like saying anything. And
Literally, the whole point of Drizzt when he was starting out and his whole thing wasn't crazily overdone was that he was an exception. He was exceptional. He was outside of the norm. He was breaking the mold. And yeah, as soon as he becomes the norm, it just makes him boring. Not that he didn't get boring after his fourth or fifth book.
Well, that's the thing. Like, actually, Possum Reviews made a really good observation on Twitter the other day, where it's like we have reached the phase where there was a cliche in media, so people began turning it on its head, and then the subversion of the cliche became the cliche, and now suddenly doing the reverse and going back to where we started has now somehow become like groundbreaking because it's been so long since that was the norm.
Speaking of Drow, can I just say one thing? I actually really enjoy your take on them there, Professor, with Zizix's world, where you basically have made them into Mad Max speed freaks, where they all drive around on motor buggies, and they proceed to give questionable advice to any adventurers that enter the quote-unquote lost continent, have them die / like send them into the middle of nowhere, proceed to destroy them with their sweet rides, and then ride back to the coast and just wait for more people to show up.
Yeah, like, okay, I can't take full credit for this because some of that was inspired by how elves behave in Dwarf Fortress. See, Toady had limited ways of conveying certain storytelling beats, so certain things are more experienced than, like, written out, per se. And one of the things that players took to noticing is that elves, while they had really particularly strong morals when it came to trees, didn't share this morality with anything else. So elves were witness doing very strange and grotesque things like eating the corpses of their enemies or their own people's corpses. And they're just like, wow, elves are really crazy. So I just took that notion and ran with it. I was like, they're crazy and they hate everyone.
That's how Melnibonians were supposed to be in their high age. There's not that many of them anymore when Elric is around, but that's the way they were supposed to be. Is they were incredibly hedonistic to the point that they would just do really weird, creepy, gross things like that.
Yep.
There's a bit actually where they mentioned that one of their like quote unquote versions of high music is that they would take slaves and they would physically ruin their voices such that they would only be able to speak in a particular tone. So, Marvin in the Muppaphones, where he would like hit them with a hammer and they would just go, ow, ow, ow. Yes. They literally would do that with living people. And they'd just be like, ow, 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 ow. Yeah.
These are showing our age here, aren't we?
See, I have always subscribed to the opinion that since Drow are continuously described as having this strange relationship with spiders and living in a really strange place called, the Underdark, or perhaps, Down Under, that they were just all Australian.
I mean, literally was that's what Snek made them into. He basically made them into Mad Max Raiders, where they all had, as I said, motor buggies and motorbikes, and they would just go around like attacking people.
They had one major city, which is literally their front, because they try to build it up like it's a tourist capital. And then they try to convince people to go out into the blighted wastes that make up the vast majority of the continent. And there's even a note where it's like, there are no landmarks on this continent apart from the one city, because it's literally there to lure you to your death so they can steal everything you own and eat the bodies. That is their MO.
Which I guess just proves that they need to have some kind of Kenshiro player character that's just going around roving and hunting them down.
I'd be very okay with that, actually. Hey, Noodle, you want to do Dungeons the Dragoning with us?
Sure, we'll do Dungeons the Dragon.
I'll ping Clockwork and Arranger after this. But yeah, no, like, see, that was the thing. I don't think I've given proper context. I don't think we've actually gone into like what the world of Zizix is. We had a that guy at our table, and we've talked about him if you guys have watched Tabletop G Bros. But the TLDR of it is he apparently went on to make his own D&D world, and it took him like, what was it, 3 years to get something playable.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so like he makes this world, and I asked Noodle, like, what's in it? And I get the most generic, uninteresting, weirdly hippy-dippy, lovey-dovey commune hand-holding kumbaya D&D world I've ever heard of. And I'm just like, Ditaku, I can do better. Give me the weekend. And he's just, okay. So in the course of 2.5 days, I write this world.
I mean, you see, you say that, and then you immediately like give me the entire thing of like, Ditaku, you need to give me a creepypasta. I'm like, all right, give me a couple days, and I have 3 chapters. It's just you guys haven't read them yet. So
I've read most of it, to be fair. But
that's fair.
In about a weekend, I wrote up this world. I'm like, I'm going to be incredibly tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic, and I'm going to make fun of the things that I feel like need making fun of, and I'm just going to throw everything. We have a city for like robots and like constructed races. We have the civilization of the Aarakocra, who literally trade in passive aggression and pettiness. and there's a
Oh yeah, they're on top of a giant tree, and no one wants to deal with them. So
it's a sheer cliff face. It's like a plateau more than a tree.
Yeah, but everyone else is on one side of the cliff, and the Aarakocra on the other, and they're like,
it's a lot of trouble
the
for us to get
one
there.
person. There's the inevitable one person that's like, I don't understand what's the problem, and then they go and meet them and like, oh,
now I understand.
Now I understand what is the problem.
Yep. And so like there's a place for every race. There's an entire archipelago of islands where the dwarves come from. There's like, there's something for everyone is what I'm saying. We'll make it a point to read that for one of these podcast episodes. I think that'd be fun.
Oh yes, and there's the goblins who are on their little peninsula between the orcs and the dwarves, and they have a extremely stratified, very bougie lifestyle.
Yep, it's definitely not a commentary on anything.
G-pop.
G-pop is their primary export. Then you have stuff like I kind of feel like I should just break it open. What do you guys say?
Yeah.
Are we going to shift gears here a little? So I will confess, one joke is not original, at least, because the world is named Zizix, which is ZZZYYX, which actually gets its name from a magic card from either the Unhinged or the Unglued set. And it has something to do with, like, there was a wizard who was tired of things being in alphabetical order, because he was always dead last, because his name was ZZZYYX. So I did steal the name. I stole the name, but everything else is more or less just off the cuff stuff that Itaku and I came up with. Historians largely agree the world has existed for far longer than recorded history would imply, due to geological and archaeological research. However, the world changed permanently with the death of many who were regarded as both a man, a god, and founder of a new age. At the ripe old age of 9,874, and quite sore about being unable to make the set a complete 10,000, his preferred, or even 9,876, which would have managed close second. While in his twilight, sorcerer Zizix made 13 proclamations, which permanently reforged the world and gave it its new name. These were as follows. Number 1. Gnomes and Dragonborn are stupid and terrible. Anyone born to either family with their stupid silent G will be known as the Gnomeborn, who have tiny gnome bodies and limbs and large, oversized Dragonborn heads. And by law, all of them will be cursed with having a silent G at the start of their names. I forgot about that part, actually.
You know, I remember the gnome. I forgot. I thought it was tieflings, actually. But
I don't know if I
remember
mentioned the tieflings or not, but I remember we were both really salty about gnomes and Dragonborn.
Yes. Yeah.
Historians speculate this was because the nurse who tended to him in his later years was a gnome herself, and quite poor at her job as Zizix himself is a reputable source, and he was routinely bullied by Dragonborn while he was at Magic Academy. Point 2. The world's biomes would not be bound by concepts like thermodynamics and physics, or latitude and longitude, as Zizix declared these concepts dangerously elf-like. Thus, all biomes are represented in large quantities across the world's 10 continents, not unlike a Minecraft map, which means basically like randomly assembled like Legos, essentially. 3. No creature, barring other deities, seeing as how they rightfully earned their station, can ever live over 5,000 years of age, henceforth upon Zizix's death. According to his memoirs, and I'm quoting here, if I don't get to 10,000, none of you diva whiner babies do. This guy kind of had a chip on his shoulder.
Is there any reason for the 5,000 year?
I think that was just a number that I chose. I think it was also to stop people from having stupidly overly long backstories. Because this was a thing back from my college days. We had a pretty solid and consistent D&D crew while I was at school, and we had this one elf, and this dude had to have been like 30,000 years old, because every time our GM tried to come up with a new story beat, it's like, oh, well, 12,000 years ago, this war happened. He was like, yeah, I know, I was there, I saw it. And I'm like, I hate elves.
He took my thing.
I hate elves so much.
The entire one of my very first D&D games was I was playing a half elf or a dragon half elf,
right?
Or half dragon elf.
Okay.
And yeah, I basically did the entire thing. And there was this like a bit where one of our wizards was actually they were conceived in this like great ritual with the demon lord coming down out of the nether, and this one great human witch, and they're like, yes, and this happened, and it caused like a great shifting in the planes, and I'm like, I know, I was there. Like,
oh, you were that guy.
Yeah, I was there. Like, yeah,
you were that guy. Okay.
I was.
That's the reason, because he did it mostly as a joke. He wasn't trying to like hijack the game or anything. It was a joke, but it was like, okay, I'm gonna make a hard cutoff here just so you can't pull that shenanigans.
I mean,
on us.
To be fair, my character wasn't that old.
As the GM of that thing, it was entirely because that wizard was like picked an arbitrary date in the past, and it was like 300 years, but then the whole thing of like with the aging thing of elves and dragons, and like there was, I'm gonna pick a age for my character based off of the like rolling the thing, and it just so happened that Ditaku's character was like 200 years older than that.
And so yeah, I was just like, I would have been like a little girl basically.
Okay.
And just like, I was like, just watch this like great, demonic ritual happen. And she was just like, neat. Apparently.
Fair enough. All right. Fair enough. No, that's mostly in jest though.
No, I was just going to say, literally the character, decided to leave the plane and go to the eternal realm of battle. So, I mean, nice. Shrug.
Well, some of these have mechanical consequences for a game and some of them don't. So some of these are just for fun. 4. All numbers are lucky or unlucky, and I won't tell you which ones. Good luck, so to speak. Number 5. Zizix refused to tell or write down what the fifth proclamation was. He affirmed the fact that a fifth did exist. However, when asked what it was, he simply grinned and laughed darkly. That sounds like something Ditaku would write. I don't know if that was him or me, or both. The 6th. Someday, the world will come to an end and blink out of existence, and the place where it used to be will become inaccessible even by the most adept of planescapers. I won't say how, and I won't say when, but it will involve a dwarf-elf marriage, peanut butter, the advent of cold fusion, and someone misunderstanding the terms animal husbandry. Until that time comes, the world and her populations cannot and will not be 100% wiped from the face of the planet.
Pretty sure that's a like mocking World of Warcraft and the fact that like every single situation is like, oh no, Zarmaklor, the Undying has reappeared after the flargening of Zlarbos. I guess the world's gonna end.
It's something, I forget what the exact motivation for it was. I think I just kind of thought it was funny at the time, but it was also kind of like the world will end someday, but today is not that day. So let us not make a big deal of it. Number 7. The alphabet, commonplace to other worlds, will always be recited in reverse in this world. The alphabet begins Z, Y, X, and proceeds until terminating at C, B, A. To violate this is to violate the highest law of the land, because Zizix was profoundly tired of always being listed last alphabetically, and decided it was time for the Z's to rise up to their rightful place. So if you have a Z name, then you sympathize, I'm sure.
Base.
Number 8.
This is coming from a D, so
Yeah. Druids and warlocks are not to be trusted any further than one can lift and throw them. 3 times that length if the druid or warlock is a gnome. Anyone who
Point of
borrows...
order. Shouldn't it be 1/3 the length?
Because it would be one third the length. Yeah, not 3 times.
Because being small, you can throw them even further.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, Snek. I think your fractions are a little bit off, but
I'm doing my math backwards on that one. Yeah. Anyone who borrows this amount of power, magical power, is in debt to something that they have no hope of ever repaying, and thus should not be trusted. When helicopters are invented, be sure to give them free rides. You'll know what this means when the time comes. Number 9. Use of the phrase arrow to the knee will be met with immediate, overwhelming, unyielding force by the magic police. No, you've never heard of them. That's because I created them for this one very specific set of circumstances, and no others you need to worry about. You're welcome, by the way. Don't worry about looking for them. They'll find you. By the way, babies whose first RPG was Elder Scrolls V, arrow to the knee means he got married. He didn't get shot. He settled down and quit wandering. That's why he's no longer an adventurer.
But that's hard. Manners of speech are hard there, Snek.
Yeah, the current generation does seem to think so. Number 10. Differentiation between dragons are purely ecumenical, where the divide is chromatic and metallic. For example, gold and red dragons are the same breed. Whether one paints themselves these hues, literally or figuratively, is purely a matter of a willful choice in philosophy. As an extension, no race is always X where X is a given alignment. I guess that would really only apply to player races, though. That probably could be applied to NPC races.
I will take blame for this one. This is actually something that I do in my own games, and honestly, I find it much simpler than having like 23 different, versions of a dragon, just because oh no, this one's good and this one's evil, and they have the same abilities.
Yeah, they're the same thing mechanically. That's a stupid thing to worry about. It also means oh no, you happen to be red, so you're bad. Who cares? Let the red dragon do what it wants. Don't tell me what to do, old man. Number 11. Anyone at the table who lives by one stat dies by that one stat. While Zizix refuses to explain what the table was, he clarified that this included people who ridiculed certain class-race combinations. This is probably the first or maybe second mechanical thing here. As said, rewatch Tabletop Bros if you guys need a refresher on what happened. But we had that guy who literally tried to run his entire character off one stat, even where that was mechanically infeasible. It was really frustrating, is what I'm saying.
Yes, and then he proceeded he proceeded to get very salty when running a game and having people do the same thing to him. Looking at you, turtle monks, motherfucker.
All right.
Wow. That might be the reason why he came back to me later, and he's like, yeah. He never apologized, but I felt, it's like, it's one of those, like, he's a lost and found rabbit. He's a why, oh why did it always happen to me rabbit? I'm like, yeah, sucks, don't it?
Yeah.
Well, see, it was hilarious when he asked me to join the game because he was having problems with the players, and I proceeded to make a human fighter that no one believed was actually a human fighter.
Why?
Oh, you literally pulled a Valentinian?
I was a human fighter, and people didn't believe I was a human fighter. And part of that was because I took the Rune Knight subclass, so I got a power that let me turn big, and I also took the Magic Initiate feat, so I got a couple cantrips, and so they never believed that I was actually just a human fighter because I could do all of these things, and they're like, oh no, it's the dark. I'm like, it's all right, I've got dark vision. I'm like, what's your race? I'm a human fighter.
Nice.
And I had dark vision because I was a Rune Knight.
All right.
And so I picked a rune that gave me dark vision, and I just fucked with them like that.
Fair.
And then like 2 years, then I moved cross country, and so I left the game. And then like 2 years later, I got asked to via Zoom bring that character back as a like boss encounter. just with that thing scaled to their level. I was the same level as them, and I proceeded to EPK them.
Nice.
I'm not terribly surprised. I'm not terribly surprised by that, but
Human fighters in 5th edition, when they can grow themselves to be big sized, the GM has a strange fascination with dinosaurs and lets you have a Allosaurus as a mount. And you take polearm mastery and end up with a large halberd. Surprisingly busted.
you basically made a dragon cataphract or dinosaur cataphract.
Yes. And I
Nice.
could do a free attack on anyone who got into melee range with me, because that's one of the things.
Became a Dark Souls boss.
Yes, I turned myself into a Dark Souls boss.
Wow.
Oh my!
And people didn't know how to deal with the fact that, wait, we are all melee fighters, and if we get close to them, he gets to free attack us.
Yep.
And he can push us back when he does that.
Mages? They had no mages.
They had a druid who was not great at the DPS. And the druid tried to restrain me, but I had a magical saddle for my Allosaurus that made it so that my Allosaurus couldn't get restrained. And also, me and my Allosaurus had the benefits of the evasion feat whenever I was mounted.
You can't see it, but I'm shaking my head right now. I could have defeated this pretty easily, but I mean, it would have required like thinking about like enchantments or like the battlefield. But
You think for an instant that... No, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to rise above. Let's not. Number 12. Wizards are to be held to a particular standard of ethics. For example, if you want immortality, you better be curing cancer in the process. It's not that ambition is to be... What's that?
I was about to say we speak about mages, and it's like, oh yeah,
About
wizards
wizards?
have a code of ethics, much like HIPAA.
If you want immortality, you better be curing cancer in the process. It's not that ambition is to be frowned upon, but all magic users need to understand that with that ambition comes an inherent debt to those around you. All who participate in society need to both give and take to society. To enforce this, and the previous two, all alignments will be added the axes of active neutral passive and calm neutral savage. If you are true neutral over true neutral, your alignment is boring.
This is actually a combination of a conversation that you had and with actually, I want to say all three of us were the parents of this one.
Probably.
Because yeah, we were talking about like how you would add a z-axis to the old
Law,
D&D.
chaos, good and evil. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it depends on if you're
Yeah,
like proactive or if you let the world happen to you, which is the active passive access. And then there's the calm and savage, which is like, how do you conduct yourself? Are you like more reserved, or are you just like proactively, smashing your way through your problems?
Yeah, and so you basically had like there literally is in the great wheel, then there's the active dimension and the passive dimension, which literally is just endless energy forever, just creating this just cloud of eternal motion versus just everything frozen in place.
So yeah, no, you would actually have a alignment spoken in 4 words instead of just two. Because honestly,
Hmm.
I think most people misunderstand the law chaos dichotomy to begin with, and having this would give you some flexibility in your thinking, I think.
I mean, most people do, unfortunately, which is, I mean, honestly, I think one of the coolest things that, I mean, out of the many cool things that Michael Moorcock did. Um, I'm halfway through Blood, and it's really cool actually to actually have a unambiguously good chaos hero or heroine rather.
Nice.
So
Number 13. All backstory should be no less than 1 paragraph, minimum 5 sentences in length, and should detail their personal philosophy and their desires, if nothing else. If someone is found to be excessively uninteresting, it is both the right and obligation of the gods to screw with this individual until they are found sufficiently storied enough to be worthy of historical mention. If one can describe you, in totality, in just a sentence, or worse yet, 1 word, you meet the definition for excessively uninteresting. What Zizix meant by this is a little unclear, but affirmed that the intended recipients of the message would understand. Let that be a lesson for
I,
you at home. Okay? Don't.
I think this is kind of a combination of things that happen to us at the table and also just kind of your own personal pet peeves.
Yeah, like
Not that I can blame you.
there have been so many times. Like, okay, like my first D&D character was not all that interesting. Okay, but I at least tried. Like a character should answer the questions of where is this person from, what are they doing currently, and what do they want to do, or to find, or to accomplish. If they can answer all those questions, you should be able to write at least a couple paragraphs about who they are, where they came from, and where they're going. Like, there are so many times where I'm just, I am playing an elven ranger and I have a bow. Cool. What do you want in life? Um,
To kill goblins.
hey, at least
Okay,
a
Goblin
racial
Slayer,
hatred.
chill.
At least a racial hatred is some kind of driving motivation. Say what you will about the morality of it, but at least he's going somewhere.
I feel like Goblin Slayer is at least if we're talking about like the actual like a light novel character, he is pretty justified in doing what he does.
Yeah, no, that is
So
100% true.
Goblin Slayer Abridged, on the other hand, I mean, he's just kind of a psycho, but still pretty funny though.
No, understandably. Next is the theology of this world, paradoxically an earthly matter, and yet not. Now, this is not a comprehensive list. This was just a handful of deities that Dutaku and I came up with, starting with the 6 great dragons. These are popular deities the world over, being both of the world and yet somehow beyond its grasp. These beings are ageless, timeless, effectively immortal by all known definitions of the term. The 6 are as follow. The first is Nefya, chaotic neutral, active calm. Most known as she who empowers the Nef balls, 7 magical rainbow-colored orbs, each about as large as a fist, which, when unified, can grant the summoner 1 wish, provided Nefya herself place a stipulation upon the conditions under which said wish is granted. She has many forms, but her preferred icon is of a lean young woman, appearing no older than her mid-teens, clad in a blue ensemble with short red hair. She represents untapped potential. Don't worry, we'll come back to those Nef balls. We're not done with them just yet. Next is Danu Nuada, broodmother of the Horde. Neutral good, passive calm. A
I can
mother.
already hear Noodle, just cringing.
I am not sorry for anything written in this document.
No, I'm just saying that Danu and Nuada are very, very different than the way you're presenting this character.
I can't believe you named this one, so I'm not sure I can take responsibility for this.
I don't know about that. I don't think so. I know Nefja is my fault. And I want to say Golden Zwarma.
Zormo
Yeah,
is
Golden
one that we borrowed from another work that we had started.
yeah. But
Because of all things, Ditaku misunderstood me. We were in a crowded mall, for context, uh, and I was explaining about Midgard Swarmer, and he misheard me say the Midgard Swarmer. And he's like, I don't know what that is, but it sounds awesome. And that just stuck around. Yes, Dana Nuada. A motherly goddess in all respects. Even her iconography depicts that of a voluptuous, beauteous visage of mature womanhood. She represents familial affections, bonds between those close to each other, and matrimony. Statues of her are often exchanged as wedding presents to bless the newlywed couple on their future together. Be careful, massive ara exists here.
Professor Snek is not beating the allegations.
No, I am definitely not. Golden Shwarma, firstborn daughter of Danu, lawful evil, active savage. Whether deserved or not, no one can deny that Golden Shwarma has had quite the storied history. Her scales are literally pure gold, causing them to grow very slowly, even by draconic standards. The adventurers love coming in and taking off hunks of her wings as bounties of treasure. She is extremely salty about this. However, one might argue she brings it on herself, due to her constantly stealing treasure and burninating thatched roof cottages and their enclosed peasantry. She represents vanity, greed, and retribution, and also early 2000s internet pop culture.
No one was alive then.
I know, right? That was so long ago. Next is Phlogistein. Angry evil, angry savage. Fire, burn to the ground.
Burn to the ground, fire, burn to the ground, fire, burn to the ground.
This is what a typical conversation with this dragon ends up sounding like. He has no patience for anything that isn't immolation and its immediate implementation. In order to stop him from ruining literally everything, the other 5 great dragons cooperated in burying him in the far south, in a land of geysers and magma surrounded by vast ocean. He represents passion, narrow-minded determination, and, well, fire.
He's also a huge send-up of Formal Hot.
Fomalhaut and Flame Hyanard. So, there's that. Aurora Lucius, a lawful neutral, a passive calm. This dragon, who lives in the tundra of the far north, is an artist who creates for creation's sake. She has crafted countless masterpieces, both using magical and practical means. She herself reflects this mentality with prismatic scales that reflect like ice under a moonlit night in her wintry homeland. Introverted, yet curious, this dragon represents artistic endeavor and is something of a matron dragon of the arts, writers, sculptors, and more. Avoid at all cost if you're epileptic. Next is Smaug, with a hard W. Chaotic good, active neutral. In some ways, dragons shape the lands that they're on just as much as the land shaped them. This charcoal gray dragon is much the same, opting to live alongside the dwarves in their mountain homes, and is fond of their mutual love and respect of technology, guns, and a hard day's work. His fiery breath can aid their furnaces in processing literally any material, and thus has become something of a god to artisans, merchants, industrialists, and smiths in particular. His symbol is a hammer over an anvil, symbolizing the march of progress and civilization. Other gods populate this pantheon as well, such as some major deities listed below, though this list is not exhaustive. The first is the cat god. Chaotic neutral, passive neutral. The cat god...
See, I thought he was, or they were a dragon.
Not in the most literal sense, because it's the 6 great dragons. That's not to say that the cat god is not a dragon. It's just they're the 6 great dragons. There's other dragons, though. The cat god, known by many monikers such as Mr. Whiskers, Fluffy Bottom Booplesnoot, Mittens McSkittens, and Daw, look at the kitty! The cat god is among the most unpredictable of deities. Preferring to lay in sunbeams and look really, really cute, the cat god is understandably popular, particularly among housewives and children. Its exact tenets as a faith are vague, to say the least. No one is 100% certain of how one exactly follows the faith of the cat god, or what said followers are exactly expected to do by their god of choice. This is in part because the cat god can teleport in and out of reality as he wishes, can move between 2 points in space without ever occupying the space between them, melt into a liquid or solidify on command, and will bite you for touching his furry tummy. The cat god exemplifies relaxation and is often prayed to before going on out-of-town vacations.
Well, clearly what you need to do is you need to deliver the, necessary sacrifice of tuna to, the location by 5 o'clock. And if you are not there at 5 o'clock, then you will proceed to get thwacked in the head, from across the room.
Yep. It reaches across the room, just bop. The Tabernacle of Undying Failure. Lawful evil, passive savage. Thus, any one given divinity, rather than a small collection of gods who failed at garnering any real praise and worship on their own. Rather than running the risk of being completely starved to death and thus disappearing into the vast unknown, these lesser gods joined together. However, it was not their own name, the Union, which stuck, but rather one of a scathing critique of that of a rival pantheon, the Mesa Mediocrity, which was branded upon them. Unlike their rivals, the Tabernacle exemplified unity and collectivism, preferring both its gods and followers alike band into large groups and try to make as much noise, praising the Union as often and as loud as possible. They, as a whole, represent the ideas of cooperation, teamwork, nation building, and friendship. Thus, despite the unflattering name, they maintain enough followers that none of their gods have yet to disappear, that anyone has noticed.
Both of these remind me of the temple to small gods that is in Ankh-Morpork, Terry Pratchett's work. I wasn't sure if you had ever read those or not.
I have not. I'm not familiar, but I've heard very good things. So, the Mesa of Mediocrity, chaotic neutral, active neutral. Hailing from the far west, actually atop a literal mesa by a starving man delirious from heat stroke who heard the voice of the mesa itself speak to him, the Mesa of Mediocrity is subject to rumors aplenty. Likewise marred with the name of its eternal rival, the Tabernacle of Undying Failure, the Mesa, its original title, believes in a singular deity, which inhabits the mesa upon which its founder traveled, giving rise to the world's understanding of Holy Land. This sentiment is quite literal, as all Mesaites are given a pebble from the mesa's top to carry with them as a holy relic. However, the mesa suffers under the weight of its own basic principles, namely that of individualism and self-fulfillment, that stop the body as a whole from reaching real cohesion. Given that their teachings also exemplify hard work, quality goods, and simple pleasures, one might believe they'd be more numerous, but the vicious smear campaign of rocks in our heads, not our hearts, propagated by the Union tends to scare people away. To say nothing of the recent development of the neo-geological sect of Mesaites adding to their woes.
Don't you understand, guys? It's more of a metaphor, okay? It's a mesa-phor, if you will. It's not about the rocks, that we carry, but it's about the rocks that we hold in our hearts.
Yes, but mesa for what?
Oh, Stappy Scott is there, guys.
Next is the Lawyer of the Skies, lawful evil, active calm. Sometimes called the man in the suit, or that guy who looks good in red. The lawyer is a deity who has what you want when you want it. However, only those who have what he wants first can get his attention. The world is yours, for a price, is his tagline, and he'll never bum a single gold coin off your person, ever. You cannot lie to him, you cannot cheat him, and you cannot avoid paying his due once you sign on the dotted line. Just be sure you really know what you're getting into when this guy's around. This is very subtle, and I know you guys at home, may not know this. It's the devil.
Lawyers can't be trusted.
Trust no lawyer.
The issue is that unfortunately a lot of people really haven't read their Bible.
Yeah.
So they don't know this, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is one of those things where I'm being as direct as possible, and this will still fly over people's heads.
And I, Noodle, am saying this, and you can go on record with me saying that.
All right.
Lawyers cannot be trusted.
And that's true.
Under any circumstance.
That is
at
true.
all. Ever.
Wow. Meanwhile, Noodle's there, with the gun to his head.
If I had a gun to my head, wouldn't I be saying that lawyers can be trusted?
Always,
No,
under
no.
every circumstance.
No. See, because then the immortal Eldritch Queen would know. We would know, and so.
I see.
Is letting you speak your mind now just because she's like, yeah.
It's so cute when he thinks he has a say in the matter. The next is the sister of jurisconsult and worriment, chaotic evil, active savage. Sometimes called that unyielding bitch, this deity manifests as a real thin entity with clown-like rainbow-colored hair, but she is anything but entertaining. The sister, which appears to be more a familial term rather than a religious one, for however much that's worth, when summoned forth will very loudly instruct the summoner on her ways. Her rules are very particular, yet abstract, concrete, yet riddled with exceptions and contradiction, perhaps owing to her own chaotic nature. Do not attempt to engage her in any kind of sport or merriment. She will go out of her way to ruin them. This is actually what the deity feeds upon, as opposed to faith or worship. She will demand rules be changed or amended to best fit her needs, even in the extremes of pointless, petty whining, or changing the nature of the game entirely to her whim, even if you are still teaching her how to play it. She will also pepper conversations with bits of her wisdom and insight by saying things like, there needs to be female space marines, or sorcerers of the shore need to tailor to my needs, you guys, whatever any of that's supposed to mean. As a suffering
This is
of...
very, very nuanced.
This is
And
very
also-
subtle, guys.
This also goes to show you how old the entire "there needs to be female space marines" has been going on for. 'Cause this is like
Yeah.
since 2017,
Something like that, because this was all pre-lockdown, yeah. As the suffering of present company increases, so does her sadistic delight, which will cause her to rapidly expand in size to the point of being morbidly obese beyond that which any human could conceivably be, whereupon she'll throw her hands up in a fit of both delight and frustration, shouting, "Ugh, whatever, Dad," and storm off, vanishing behind whatever door she manages to squeeze through next, even if it's a closet or pantry through which exit should be impossible. Needless to say, it is not recommended you ever invoke this deity or her tiresome, long-winded wrath.
You see here, ladies and gentlemen, Snek is a master of, subtlety.
Subtle commentary.
This is, in fact, a metaphor. But meta for what?
It's what comes after a meta 3, but before a meta 5.
Is this Thosha? Is that how you say that?
I've never actually decided on how this should properly be pronounced, but Thosha is
I
enough
think
of a...
Thosha.
Thosha would be close. Yeah, that's probably how you'd say it in English. Thosha. Thosha.
Hello, boys.
The Queen of Delights. Neutral evil, passive neutral. A supernaturally beautiful woman, born without gag reflex of any kind, who is here to do
Oh,
one thing and one thing only. Get subs on her Twitch channel! Okay, no, I'm kidding. Not really. She represents the
Welcome
sins...
to my hot stream. Hot tub stream.
Hot tub stream, yeah. She represents sins that are more, shall we say, victimless crimes. Have too much to drink, stare a little, or perhaps a lot, too long at that lady in the low-cut dress, gamble away next month's rent? Well, you can blame it on Thosha. Most people do, regardless as to whether it was personal weakness or her actual influence at work. The phrase, Thosha made me do it, is practically a running gag in most cultures. However, to downplay her power is foolish and potentially dangerous. She is an evil goddess who does not need to seek you out, as human nature will almost inevitably bring you the most desired of her crop to her, through no real effort on her part. If she wants your attention, she'll get it, rest assured. And she doesn't feel a need to bind you by rules or contracts or even lectures. She's confident you'll meet her halfway when she's good and ready for you. And yes, everything she says is pretty much a double entendre.
Also, she lives in a giant casino. It's also a dojo.
Dojo, casino, it's all in the mind. Next is the god of platitudes, true neutral, active calm. Always left in the lowercase, the god of platitudes' true name is actually Shibboleth Truism, but nobody actually refers to him as such. He is the world's most proactive deity, and he genuinely cares for those who invoke his name or title. When one prays to him, he detects it immediately, and with speed incomparable, rushes to the faithful side in order to deliver one of his many platitudes he is so named for. Common ones include, "It'll be okay," or "It'll work out somehow." Sometimes he'll even go as far as to offer up a fist bump and a weak smile of sympathy on the faithful's behalf. But that's all he's really capable of doing, as real, meaningful power is actually beyond his capacity. Oddly enough, he's very popular as a god, and his iconography is mostly just a stick figure of a guy with a bland, smiling face.
To be perfectly honest, if you could just get fist bumps and yeah, on command. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, That sounds kind of cool, actually.
That's the thing. He's supposed to be this super nice guy who's trying everything he can to like help people, but he can't. He is completely impotent in every way that matters. And he's just like, "Hey, buddy, it'll be okay." Shibboleth is a term or phrase that doesn't mean anything. And truism is an obvious statement.
It literally is shibboleth is it's a ritual. So I mean, you're literally just going through the motions. Yeah, I get what you're trying to do.
Yeah, he's not saying anything significant, but he's trying. In his own impotent way, he's trying.
This is once again, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Snek, being very subtle with his thoughts on certain aspects of. Now that you're focusing on, incredibly modern, faith and worship, I see you're going back to, the early Bronze Age. Looks like you're going to Namu Tiamat.
Well, I mean, yeah, something like that. Next is the underlying ocean queen, lawful good, neutral calm. Ruler of all the oceans, of which there is an awful lot, there is no creature which can begin to dwarf her truly massive size. She is the greatest of all the world's inhabitants, and just seeing her causes awe and admiration in most. She is, in truth, quite gentle, though. She views the god of the mesa, whether or not he actually exists.
Oh, boy. Spoken as a true landlubber.
She views the god of the mesa, whether or not he actually exists, as her eternal rival, being a god of elevated earth versus her status as the deep ocean goddess. She represents longevity, gentleness, and the kind face of the sea. She once attempted to surmount the surface world, but she quickly found herself beached, and the denizens of the mainland, after her boobs leveled a small town, assisted getting her back where she belonged, as she profusely apologized, all the while looking very sheepish. Since then, she has maintained her faithful vigilance for the Mesa's god, even if he is thousands of miles inland.
And this is the one that, the Snek worships as created by his favorite Pokemon stream. Giant woman.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I think this is the legendary and oft-fabled Gigantamax giant woman.
Yes, Gigantamax mermaid giant woman. Yes. Geography.
Gigantamax giant woman mermaid mode.
Geography. Also.
God, we never see the Snek ever again.
Hey, wait a second.
Farewell, I'm going to my home planet. Bye, Ditaku. Bye, Noodle.
Going through a tunnel. Remember to keep on not giving up. There are 10 continents, and this world is approximately 3 times the size of our own Earth. Listed below are the continents and the biggest of their civilizations. Suntland, cradle of civilization, the central continent, and its largest. Blessed with many biomes and many forms of life, and by extension many cities and civilizations to call its own. Its primary demographic is boring old humankind, but it's hardly limited to that. Its major locales include the kingdom capital, Kranara, the human capital, nestled in the forested north. A lot of bars and taverns for plucky adventurers of all backgrounds to meet at. The king recently passed, causing a 3-way power struggle. Okay, I got to explain this, because this is a direct reference to another YouTuber. So, Ditaku was like, hey, there's this guy who does short sketches, and they're funny, named ProZD. And so I decided to borrow some names from him, and one from our good friend the Lone Ranger. And I'm an hour into this, so statistically people have stopped listening. So I think I can get away with most of these jokes now.
ProZD is so jumped the shark, and he
he did, but this also is a product of its time, much like Amazing Quest, in that this was 2017 or 2018 when this was written.
Right.
So this caused a 3-way power struggle between his bastard son, Chadicus the Duke, Thaddeus, and the princess, Scarlet Buxom Titsaplenty. Unbeknownst to most, Scarlet also moonlights as an adventurer under the handle of Sexica. Tourism destination, the ruins of Nef. What remains of the once illustrious Temple of Nefya? All that stands is the pedestal and what used to be the center of the building, a round table with 7 indentations for the Nef balls, and the staff of Nef pierced into its center. Legend has it that once you have gathered the Nef balls and worked the shaft, Nef will appear and grant any one wish. However, She keeps a running log
Oh
of.
my.
I was like, am I making the joke subtle enough here? Is this subtle enough for you?
Once again, this is also, a product of its time, and Dragon Ball Bridge had just ended, I want to say, so.
I want to say that the Namek arc had ended, didn't it? Were
No,
they
if
done with
this
the
is
Buu saga by then?
2016, no, dude, they got to Cell and they were done.
Okay.
Remember?
Okay. Oh no,
Because they
you're right. You're
meandered
right.
on Cell for so long, and they're like,
Yep.
This is hard. We're done." It's like, oh, okay, all right,
Okay,
fine.
good, because the Cell arc was not your best work.
Then they got mad that they lost a lot of subscribers after that. They're like, but you
Yeah.
came for us. I'm like, no, we came
No.
for TBs.
Yeah. However, she keeps a running log of what wishes were made, and at one point allowed wishes to be made at any time. However, according to Neff herself, after the 12th consecutive wish for sex bread, whatever that is, she destroyed her own temple and scattered the balls to the far corners of the world. While she originally planned on hiding them in impossible to find locations, apparently she was prohibited from doing so by Zizek's command that it would defeat the whole adventure aspect that such a treasure could provoke. Never one to shy away from mortal suffering, Neff eagerly agreed to the condition. Eternally dark city, bleak. This is a Breath of Fire reference. Victim of Zizek's biome-altering proclamation, Bleak rests in a strange zone where the sun never shines. Thieves and ne'er-do-wells love this place, and the Thieves' Guild has work for any who are so bold as to take it. G-pop capital of the world, so all. The vibrant, busy day-to-day life never stops when the sun is up, and the neon nightlife roars when it's down. Home to goblins, orcs, gnolls, and any race who fancies the G-pop scene, fans of music genre and expensive coffee flock here all times of the year. Rumors abound of shady dealings between record companies and pop stars awaiting a knight in shining armor. Wild City, Jangopolis. Settled in the jungles of the West, Jangopolis attracts human-animal hybrid races above any other. Survival of the fittest rules here in this chaotic town, and the recently crowned King of Beasts, Leopold the Knoll, has a contentious history of maybe cheating during his official bouts for dominance for the throne. Heroes might have to get involved. Macpon, archipelago of the dwarves. Divided into 4 large nation-states worth of islands, warlords rise and fall and battle for control of the island chain non-stop. 4 major houses have emerged from the riffraff, eager to have heroes to assist them in subverting the efforts of the others. The first is the MacDonald. Known for their extensive ranching operations, the MacDonald clan has dominated the eastern portion of the island chain. Their family crest has twin yellow arches on a red backdrop. They operate out of Okinawa. Next. This is subtle comedy, ladies and gentlemen. Next is the Ramenjin. Known more for their rice wine and noodle recipes than their warriors, the Ramenjin remain competitive by maintaining economic growth, strong by keeping free markets and open guilds. Their family crest is a strange variation of the at symbol. They're headquartered in the city of Osaka. Next is the McFarlane. They initiated conflict with the Tachibana clan when they tried to muscle into their strange fan comic market. While they were successful in copying the overall drawing styles, their penchant for weird pro-Luxodon rants outed them as mere imitators. Their family sign is an edgy black and white symbol that totally wasn't ripped off from an Amaze Comics character at all. They're stationed in the city of Kyoto. And the fourth family is the Tachibana. Laying in the center, the Tachibana clan have taken the greatest beating, both in terms of military might and economic hardship, of any of the 4 houses. They are able to sustain due to having a large amount of independent wealth from the weirdly lucrative fan comic export trade, which recently blew up in Kranara. They are said to be willing to pay handsomely to anyone who will aid them. They are located in Tokyo. Next is Whoop Whoop Land. In the southernmost part of the globe lies the blighted wastes of Whoop Whoop Land, homeland to the elves of all stripes. Though the Dark Elves claim ownership of the land and the others moved in later, historians really couldn't be bothered to verify these claims. On the count, very few polite people bother dealing with Whoop Whoop Landians. Yeah, just a bit. Daphne, Whoop Whoop capital. Founded by the Wood Elves, who are a touch more civilized than the alternatives, as a port city in hopes of encouraging trade, Daphne rapidly became the capital for the entire continent. Not that it changed tourism much, with cries of "Korya Gabongas go frisk a jelly wop!" and wildlife usually reserved for high-level dungeons casually prowling around any place that isn't densely packed with the living garbage disposals known as the elves. However, no one is without needs or a price, and it's rumored that the upcoming gubernatorial election might be a chance to sway elfin culture for generations to come. There are no other major cities in Woopleland. The rest is wild deserts filled with jellyfantulas, terrifying jellyfish tarantula hybrids, and worshippers of a strange being called the One Down Under, a massive great white shark with the legs of a Daphne funnel web spooner who'd chase down its victims, all the while singing really annoying songs so they know it's nearby. Please, do not go into the outback for any reason. It's a common practice for elves to trick low-level adventurers into dungeon crawls for treasures untold, only to await for them to die of dehydration, and then eating/robbing them in the wastes. I forgot about the shark spider. I'll be honest, I forgot that one entirely.
Arranger, if you listen to this episode, please post in the comments and let us know how accurate this is a depiction of your homeland. Please and thank you.
I'm feeling like we're pretty accurate.
I don't feel like they like trick tourists to go into the desert and then eat them.
I think they kind of actively encourage the opposite in real life.
Yeah.
Like, please don't do that. That's a terrible plan. Also, we're not eating you.
They are all like 7 feet tall, hyper Amazon though.
I mean, that is true. Next is the ruined city, Lowendel. Once, the floating island Lowendel. It was a brilliant, I can talk, I swear. It was a brilliant feat of engineering by the various races of giants, showing off precisely what their magic and sheer strength could craft. However, the political scene on the city, when it was active, became tense when outside forces began pressuring the largely isolationist Lowendel to begin opening its borders, which caused an influx of incompatible foreign civilizations and caused massive wage stagnation and degradation. Not long after, it was found that the city was powered using dragon eggs as power sources to keep the sky engines aloft and drifting through the skies. The ensuing war between dragons and the residents saw to the end of this glorious trip to the clouds, ending half submerged in the sea, a few miles off the east coast of Suntland. Nothing really stops people from visiting nowadays, apart from the fear that the remains that jut up from the surface might one day fall and join the rest of it under the sea.
Wow, we here at, the Tomodachi Bros are fond of very subtle social commentary.
Very subtle. Can you see all this subtlety? It's great.
We haven't even begun to touch the subtlety.
Next is the Clockwork Island, New Envoy. An ANCAP paradise or an ANCAP hellhole, depending on where you land on the political compass. Want the obligatory anachronistic high-tech world for your steampunk fetishist friends? Playing a race that's built rather than born? Congrats! We got your backstory covered, fam. The cityscape that encompasses almost the totality of the island nation towers into the sky, and for no particular reason, they all have smokestacks billowing smoke and smog into the air, even buildings that shouldn't logically release any byproducts. I guess the founders of New Envoy took their motif quite seriously. However, locals are complaining about an ongoing battle between a rotund scientist and his eternal rival, Speedy the Quill Rat, and the collateral damage that ensues due to the kidnapping and subsequent releasing of local wildlife and the demi-human races.
Dr. Omelet Man, no, you shouldn't take the elves. You shouldn't jam elves into robots.
But that's where you're wrong, my friend. Elves aren't people.
Oh, okay. I mean, that the smart doctor says so. I mean.
Well, then it must be true. The Sheer Cliff Aviary, Pagress's Roost. An island set above the seas atop a mountain high, defended from invasion by its titular sheer cliff, an insurmountable obstacle to those who cannot fly, have an airship, or are incredibly bloody-minded mountain climbers. It was founded by the Aarakocra elder, Pagress, several generations ago, and established itself as a strange, shamanistic society that tended to worship spirits of such low station that most major pantheons don't even bother to list them as credible deities. Largely made up of ranchers and farmers who grow low-maintenance crops like potatoes and wheat, they have carved for themselves a useful niche in terms of trade. And while airships certainly opened the means for trade, it didn't do too much to help the popular opinions of the natives. All winged beings flock here, something about annoying birds of a feather flock together and crap on everyone's otherwise lovely day, or something like that, most populous among them being Aarakocra, who love humble bragging and passive aggression above all other forms of communication. While gold is the universal standard currency in this world, these bird-like people trade commonly in guilt trips and pettiness, which make this place rather unpopular for repeat visitation. However, their eternal rivalry and multiple wars with their closest neighbor, Metal Skull Warkeep, does elicit a small sense of passing pity for its inhabitants. I really hate Aarakocra.
The-
Did you know that?
Metal Skull Warkeep.
One of my favorite names. I'm actually really proud of that one. Yes, Metal Skull Warkeep, the land where giants, Tortle, orcs, Goliaths, and several other large races first hailed from. It is renowned for its extensive mining operations and its incredibly robust hard rock/heavy metal music scene. They are also honor-bound to see to the fulfillment of any promise or oath made for any reason, or so goes the stereotype. Calling someone one who keeps their promises like a warkeeper is actually quite high praise. And before you go and shoot your mouth off like a stupid tourist, there is no actual metal skull. It was named for the founder and namer of the Warkeep, so named due to their ability to weather attacks from their airborne enemies for months on end and turtle the bombardments with minimal losses. Grog Metal Skull. Ancient land disputes are held to this day as deep grudges, as warkeepers tend to view the aviary as territory that should be rightfully under the control of the Forge Master, their word for a king, basically, and thus will use any slight as pretense to execute large-scale invasion plans. And since the denizens of the aviary tend to shoot their mouths off on a good day, these pretenses are many in number. Rumor has it that anyone who brings the Forge Master means by which to retake their lost land will be rewarded with riches beyond measure from the deepest mines of the Warkeep.
Based.
Master, I present you with Giant Catapult.
Next is the Burning Hellscape, Bad Gaia. Actually, a very popular tourist destination in recent times, Bad Gaia fell in a time of consistent bad leaders over the course of a hereditary monarchy whose family tree, put simply, was not forking. The last,
Oh my.
the last king was so inbred and incompetent, he declared Thursdays illegal and signed no less than 3 royal decrees mandating the production of, and I'm quoting the documents here, the square root of raspberry. This mixture of inability combined with some shadowy movements behind the throne between elderly power brokers resulted in a complete economic meltdown, only forestalled by a rapid expansion campaign of seizing up every neighboring village and hamlet and immediately enslaving everyone within. This warpath led to the new name of this place just in time for nature to take her course. The old king bit the bucket, as he wasn't smart or physically capable of kicking it, and the subsequent revolution resulted in the destruction of the shadow government and installation of a parliamentary republic, which swiftly set to righting the wrongs of the once all-powerful monarch. To this day, well-meaning but dim-witted adventurers storm the shores of Bad Gaia, expecting to be met with, well, burning hellscapes, but the greenery has never been lusher, and the economy never richer. In truth, this is one of the most peaceful regions of the world, and most major problems are handled via the Adventurers Guild, the democratic, peace-loving, people's blissful free state of democracy and plenty, Ivaranandia. Having undergone about 20 name changes in the last 10 years and extremely tight regulated information flow, one might be forgiven for not knowing much about this place at first blush. The supreme ruler of Ivaranandia is indeed an elected official in the strictest sense, especially as how many rival candidates who manage to get on the ballot mysteriously end up committing suicide before the election's results are presented. The same prime minister has been in charge for the past several decades without meaningful contest. There is a Congress, but it's mostly 40 people from their respective counties within the nation who compete to see how long they can balance a pencil on the bridge of their nose for the longest time for all the actual civil duties that they execute. In truth, this place is held under severe government control, and citizens view it as too opinionated or not patriotic enough end up disappearing under mysterious circumstances in the dead of the night. It is said, however, that the Prime Minister, General Lan Wang, has an affinity for adventurers and the tales they tell, and is quick to give them profitable work paid right from the nation's coffers for those willing to overlook little details like human rights abuse or indiscriminate murder of dissidents. The last continent is the lost world Oregon. Massive ruins breach the canopies of miles upon miles of endless jungles. Also breaching said canopies include actual freaking dinosaurs. While tourism and ventures into Oregon are not, strictly speaking, prohibited, it is frowned upon strongly by the civilized world. There exists no formal governmental body in Oregon, on account that attempts of forming civilization are thwarted by the presence of actual dinosaurs, and potential mummy curses for all the ruins strewn about. The origin of the ruins is largely unclear, and many of them are unexplored. So there's probably, maybe, treasure inside. You should disregard all the many warnings issued about coming here and totally go exploring, for realsies.
I have a feeling that dinosaurs wrote the second half of that.
The original author got eaten by a dinosaur and replaced. Yes. Next is a small collection of artifacts and other neat stuff. The first being the everlasting socks of Ever Comfort. Just like Grandma used to send you for your birthday. Except these socks are legendary in their comfortableness, and just wearing them sends most, even the most high-strung, into a state of blissful relaxation. Even the most caffeinated among heroes would soon fall into a comfortable sleep anywhere they can lay down upon wearing them. However, such bliss is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, as the socks will, while the host rests, depart for parts unknown by means unknown to even the most determined of scholars. A single person will never wear the socks but once in their life. Some come to terms with this, and others spend the rest of their lives chasing 100% wool blessings. I made a pair of socks a legendary artifact. Because I can.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, no, exactly. Next is the Hero's Sword. A sword of exceptional design and never requiring maintenance to keep its legendary edge. Unfortunately, the sword is enchanted in other ways too, namely that of a very high-pitched, nasally voice, which encourages its owner to deeds of heroism, usually in the vaguest way possible.
We must slay the Goblin King!
Often giving instructions such as that, a position which hasn't existed in this world in over 3,000 years, or we must set right the wrongs of this world, and other inexplicable ideas. If you think that maybe just passing it off to a well-meaning heroic type might well liberate you, you are mistaken. The hero sword has an affable and agreeable personality type, and it tends to cling to people for longer than the owner is okay with, finding its way back to the chosen one as many times as they attempt to liberate themselves of it. The hero sword is, of course, of a heroic charm and single-mindedness, so it doesn't even take these attempts personally. It understands, but you still gotta find the Goblin King. You can thank Tutaku for that one, actually.
I actually had a exalt that basically had that just had a very, very absent-minded, awakened great Diclave, and the entire thing was that it was this, very young little girl who was exalted as a ice walker. So basically, a young Viking who was just given this gigantic sword that keeps telling us, like, no, guys, we gotta kill the Goblin King. And she's like, the what?
There's
Goblin King?
What's that?
Actually, Ditaku, you might not remember then that the true origin of the Goblin King was even further back when you were playing a vampire, and your vampire actually accidentally drank blood from a changeling and had strange hallucinations.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And the one of the hallucinations told you that you must slay the Goblin King.
I am your antediluvian. Sire, you must slay the Goblin King. But where is the Goblin King, sire? I'm going into a tunnel. Ooh.
And so you knifed a random hobo that in your hallucinations you thought was the Goblin King.
Oh, the darkness is fun.
It was one of our first World of Darkness games.
That's a good start, I would say. The next artifact is the Bag of Absolute Necessity, a permutation of the Bag of Holding, but rather than being able to store an unlimited quantity of whatever you need to put away, it always already has what you need in stock. The trade-off is it's filled with an explosive quantity, always ready to overflow, making the bag quite heavy for one in the family of enchanted goods, but as soon as you request, or even think of, an item and open the sack, you'll be inundated by an ever-increasing amount of what it is you requested. Want a drink of water? Have an entire raging river! Need a hammer to tend to a patch job on the carriage? Better get what you need and close it quick before you're buried alive in an avalanche of hammers. Of course, requesting abstract ideas, people, or one-of-a-kind items will result in a single, slender, feminine hand raising from the eternal depths of the bag and flipping you off before sealing itself shut for 24 hours. The next are the Nef balls. 7 orbs of... Wait, we did this already. Look, there's 7 of them, 1 for each band of the rainbow. Get them together, go to the ruins of Nef, put them in their slots, work the shaft. You get a wish and everything. It's great. Just don't ask Nef for overly specific wishes or waste her time. And she'll probably do something like technically grants the verbiage of the wish, but with some kind of complication. Like the young hero, Zex the Mighty, requested to find the love of his life, a fair maiden to wed. Nef agreed, but failed to mention she was not the same age, race, or location as him, and sent him on a Greek tragedy, or comedy, depending on your views on whole Whole women, that lasted the next 13 years of his life.
Poor Zex the Mighty.
It's okay, he eventually won in the end. It took him a while. 13 years to be exact. Next was the Maestro's Quill. Putting quill to page was the ambition for the musician who once held this unique writing instrument, up until he realized the enchantment he had sold his wife, children, and best friend for in a Faustian bargain had a terrifying asterisk placed next to the wish of, I wish to write the greatest music there ever was. Chiefly in that greatest was not defined. The sadistic deity that explained that great music was merely music that made money. Thus the only thing the quill could ever pen was G-pop. After single-handedly giving rise to the genre, the musician in question was said to either have locked himself deep in the deepest dungeon he could hide away in, or struck himself down in grief. Some variations of the legend claim that he is still alive, having gone slightly mad, and churns out G-pop to this very day.
Dun dun dun.
Opa Friday style.
Oof. 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 Next, the good shit.
That was 50 million emotional psychic damage.
Yeah, it was, as a matter of fact. Next is the good shit. A type of booze, allegedly brewed only by gods and dragons. Somehow this concoction has a proof that exceeds 200, sometimes to cartoonishly overblown degrees. Sometimes referred to as the death tonic due to damage to the liver a single shot can cause, it is sought by collectors all over the world and people with truly titanic constitutions in order to either prove something or just to try it for its own sake. Next is the good shit. A strange type of plant that resembles crabgrass mixed with maple leaves, which leaves the consumer with the most heavenly of highs upon being smoked. Supposedly found on an island where both the latitude and longitude were 420. It is all but lost to time. That is such a terrible joke, but I love it. It's so dumb. Latitude and longitude were both 420. It is all but lost to time due to Zizix's proclamations. However, one enterprising man supposedly found this island again. The island and my fortune are yours for the taking, he said glibly as he faced his execution for internet piracy. But you'll have to find it first. I left the good shit in one piece. And since then, pirates the world over seek out that good shit, the grass that would make their hallucinations come true.
Yeah, yo.
It's like, yes, you are welcome for once again being reminded the 4Kids dub was a thing.
You know what? Snek, may I offer a suggestion?
What's that?
Could we do, if we're going to do an actual game in the Zizix world, could we do, like, the actual, like, Pick of Destiny, except we're trying to find the good piece?
You know, I'm okay with that. Are we after the weed, or are we after a musical instrument, though? That's my question. Or
I
both.
feel like we need to be well, I mean, he said he left all his treasure there. I feel like we can be after the treasure.
That's true. Because he left the treasure there, too. So, yeah. No, that's fair. Okay, you know what? I'm okay with this. Next, the Axe of Bloodthorn. Struck down by King Goodman McAwesomeDude, the final words of the arch-vile demon Theroth Bloodthorn as he bled literal thorns out of his body, like literal, actual 6-inch long thorn vines, was, "Oh, thank God! I feel so much better!" Thanks, McAwesome Dude. And then he died. The
For
irony...
the record, he actually wrote all of that down. That was not like a quip or an offhanded aside. That literally is what's on the page in front of me.
Yes, that's actually what's written down. The irony being that had Bloodthorn and McAwesome Dude sat down and hashed out their differences diplomatically, there is some good chance the two would have seen a lot of common ground. But such is the whimsy of the deities. Left behind in his wake, however, was the most metal of all weapons, the Black Axe of Bloodthorn, clad with awesome band iconography, the most elaborate of ancient runes and radical glyphs that empower the axe as the ultimate instrument of destruction. And I mean instrument literally, because in addition to being able to split skulls, it could blow minds with its awesome metal riffs. The power to move you. This is the legend of the Black Axe.
Now, I understand where you're coming from with this, Professor, and I do feel the need to point out, though, to Steelman, devil's advocate, if you will, that you say earlier that you talked about demons are demons and evil is evil. And then you have this entire situation where you talk about, bad guy, McEvil dude, and good king, McAwesome man. And they're like, oh yeah, if they just sat down and hashed out, then the Archfiend and the heroic king would have gotten along.
You see, but you are overlooking one small detail. Archvile Demon is not his species, it's a title. Theroth was the Nobunaga of his country. He was known for being, quite the hard case. But the man himself was just a human. He was cursed with blood in his thorn, the thorn in his bloods. You know what I'm trying to say.
I get that. I'm just saying that,
I know.
Felt like
it worked better for the joke.
Yes, and also there was going to be that one guy that wasn't going to be able to get that because clearly the entire thing is tongue in cheek.
Yes,
we've been recording for over an hour. Statistically speaking, no one is listening.
Based on my statistics, that is 100% true. Leave a comment in the comment section right now if you're still listening.
I do.
Thank you, Nitaku.
I listen all the way through.
I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that, genuinely. All right. Next up is the Sword of McAwesome Dude. The glimmering white sword of King Goodman McAwesome Dude, representing the oath that binds good-hearted people together. So much so, the sword itself gained a level of intelligence, driven by the passionate need to unify souls, much as her former wielder once did. However, this created a small problem. Anyone worthy to wield the sword is immediately identified by the blade as King Goodman himself, and immediately falls in love with the wielder in a powerful, passionate, and unyielding capacity. So much so, she can even transform into a human shape, a beautiful maiden of golden hair and emerald eyes, who will swear herself to you, absolutely and unquestioningly. However, she will kill a bitch. She will never allow any competition, even in the irrational sense, oftentimes killing siblings, friends, and the incidental tavern keeper in the pursuit of keeping her love all to herself. However, her devotion is true, and she will not question your motives or actions no matter how heinous they might become. Is it worth it? You decide.
Not a deal.
I could work with this.
I mean, I do have
Ditaku.
2 brothers.
Ditaku, it's all right. I can fix her.
There's a
This is not the most ridiculous legendary weapon I've ever dealt with.
That's true. I mean, to be fair, it's true.
Hey, yeah, I'm a chainsaw. All right. Hey, I'm from the first age. Really? Yeah. You want to murder people? I don't know. It'll be cool. Well, you convinced me.
I guess I have to now.
Itaku, why does your solar have a chainsaw and you're just cutting people? He made it a compelling argument, okay? I just feel like I need to kill you.
Not my fault. He raised a good point. Next is the Stone of Self-Actualization. Many stones have been imbued with magical properties over the world's history, but none are so mysterious as this plain gray stone. Legend has it that whoever possesses the stone faces a great crisis of self and will stand in front of the nearest bathroom mirror they can find and examine themselves for many hours, sometimes days, thinking non-stop about their actions, the consequences, and how they came to stand in this very spot, and what it all amounts to. Most who undergo this challenge, however, generally walk away stronger for their resolutions discovered in this fashion, though often peckish and dehydrated for their time spent doing so. Most people who aren't complete dirtbags understand they made mistakes and did the best they could in any given situation. A few less well-meaning individuals suffer full-on identity crises when met with the weight of their sins, many repenting and seeking roles in clergy, and some more desperate individuals will take their own lives in this process. While this sounds like a miracle stone, the problem is no one is really sure what makes the stone special. There's no enchantments on it that any wizard can find, and rumors abound the stone itself isn't even unique. Many look-alike rocks having similar effects the world over. Maybe it's just something in the water. Next, the Tome of Rules. A book of untold, seemingly infinite wisdom and untapped knowledge, but the contents always changes, depending on who is observing it. A benevolent king may find within its pages practical economic theory, whereas an adventurer might find a handy map, or perhaps the mechanics behind monks expending ki in order to execute additional attacks. The problem is the one who holds...
It's just very subtle.
Very subtle. Yes. We are going very, very subtle here, aren't we? The problem is the one who holds the book too long soon finds themselves depending on it for every situation, no matter how mundane, and catastrophic anxiety when absent its guidance. Most will either be forced to separate from it when it becomes too cumbersome in the lives of their loved ones, if the owner in question is indeed loved, or something is said to be much worse that awaits for those who love the book more than they love life. They become aware of something greater, something beyond. We can only extrapolate from the last words of those who suffer this fate as they disappear into a blinding white void, but we do know they become intensely focused on something that they call the fifth wall, and start referring to friends, acquaintances, and even enemies as stat blocks and archetypes, before their final anchor in this world shatters, warping them to a place they cannot return from, and no one can follow after. The tome will vanish for a short time before becoming known to another host some undefined time later. Next is Zizix's notepad. More of an idea given form than a proper pad of paper, whoever possesses this becomes known as a grand manipulator, one who runs the show, as it were. Whoever has this is said to have godlike powers, able to shape the nature of events, bring new life to this world, snuff out old ones, and even branch parallel time streams off the same starting point. While there are technically an infinite number of grand manipulators and thus an infinite number of Zizix's notepads floating around, the item is purely singular in number despite this. Don't try to put your head around it, it's not that important. What is important is that the Grand Manipulator is not your enemy nor your ally, but a means to an end. It's also said that meaningful prayer offered up to these invisible entities can bring you closer to greater understanding of the world around you and what's expected of you. Thus, communication with the Grand Manipulator is vital to any adventurer's success. Be honest with yourself, thoughtful with your actions, and fair to your friends. Known as the AP for short, these sentient scrolls of seemingly limitless length fly over the world to share the latest news, politics, celebrity gossips, personal ads, and more. In truth, the real form of the AP is a massive, self-aware, self-sustaining alchemical printing press which promises the most accurate trademark reporting the world has ever known, in return for being fed vials of ink on the regular to help sustain itself. The governments of the world have found this a fair price to pay, excepting Ivor and Andia, who strictly forbid this device and its spawn, and routinely grant the oily tribute on the regular. The mother machine bursts the floating scrolls, who go to spread the news wherever tribute, sometimes called a subscription fee, is sent from, making news of heroic exploits and sudden political shifts known within moments of their happening. The floating scrolls most people know do not have infinite lifespans, and once they run the full ream of their parchments, they collapse wherever they happen to be and become inert, referred to as yesterday's news. Important note, the alchemical press has called the Jengopolis royal election for Leopold the Knoll, robust safeguards ensure security and accuracy in reporting on election results. Learn more here. I will never apologize for anything in this book. Ever.
You had to have been there, ladies and gentlemen.
It was a different
5 years ago.
Yes. Yeah, not
Uh,
only was it fun to create that, it also got me the opportunity to take unique jabs at things that I find incredibly frustrating in fantasy writing. And here's the thing, like some things that you guys might have thought I was making fun of, like, oh, there's like a city with like technology stuff. I don't mind that. In fantasy, I think anything goes. So if you want to have like, oh, we have robots and magic, we have all these things, that's perfectly fine. The things that I actually was a little salty about were like living and dying by one stat. The things that actually bothered me, like, oh, the demons are just misunderstood, or I'm gonna just use this one stat and min max this one stat, and this one stat is the only thing I'm gonna use. Build of this world was to not only mock the things I don't like, but to celebrate the things that I do like about tabletop gaming. I think there should be really interesting bits. Like every city, I tried to have some kind of story hook where, like, an adventurer could go to literally any of these cities and find something that they could, like, dive into if they found interesting. In my view, the GM should not be enemy nor allied to the player. They should be a storyteller, and they should focus on being that story really good and really interesting. But at the same time, I feel there's certain things that the GM does need to acknowledge. Not the least of which is the player has to be making an effort too, and certain rules can be bent, certain rules can be broken. And the whole like, oh well, people might go to the concept like, well, you said that race can't always be just the one alignment, but you just said demons are yeah. Okay, so for player races, the player should be allowed to be any alignment they want. I made a lawful good orc cleric, so like, you know, bend the rules, have fun with it. But at the same time, demons are not a player race. Tieflings are half human, so they're not true demons. Of course, they'd have the option of being good because they'd have the right to reject their own demonic nature, which would, again, be way more compelling than most people work with tieflings. You can do so much more, and you can do so much better, even in a fantasy world where the good guys are good guys and the bad guys are bad guys. Bad guys don't always need sympathetic backstories or like we don't need to know how Cruella de Vil was bitten by a Dalmatian as a kid and now seeks to kill them all and turn them into upholstery.
it wasn't even that she got bitten; it was her mother got
Uh,
uh, killed by them.
yeah, and that's
It was
still
really
super dumb.
stupid.
Just saying.
I mean, yeah, it was really stupid.
Absolutely idiotic.
The entire thing is very confusing, and honestly, I mean, it's kind of what I hear is going happened with the um, remake of Sleeping Beauty, or not Sleeping,
Snow White.
Snow White. Goodness gracious, yes, and it completely lost track of what they were trying to do, and on top of that, they let their lead actor shoot her mouth off.
Don't worry, Sleeping Beauty
And
already got that mistreatment because they did the Maleficent film where, oh, she was poor and misunderstood, you guys. There can be complicated villains. There can be villains with complex backstories and reasons for doing what they do. I'm not saying for an instant that there can't be. But I am saying that not all villains need to be OMG, they're so justified and so much like me, hashtag FRFR.
they don't want to actually have the conversations about, like Byronic heroes, that actually end justifies the means. It just is a case of, nothing ever matters. Nothing that you do ever matters, and everyone needs to treat you nicely, even if you're a horrible person. And it's like, that's not real life. And that's not even a good thing to do. That's just being an awful person. And somehow, like, society just does not ever call you on that.
We've talked about it before. You can have villains, you can have unrepentant villains, and sometimes those are the most fun. I'm sorry, fanboys, but Kefka was a better Final Fantasy final boss than Sephiroth was. Like, no matter how many remakes and sequels and demakes and remakes you make, Kefka will always be infinitely more interesting.
In that regard, honestly, I think that Merca in Tactics Advance was fantastic. And the entire time, his entire thought process was, "Oh no, I've been isekai to another world. Well, guess I gotta start killing people.
Better start massacring the entire pantheon of gods."
Merca, why? This isn't reality. We need to return to reality. You've murdered people. These are actual
They're
people."
not really people.
I don't care that your life sucks back in there. Now get in the cart with the drunk and the cripple.
This isn't real life. Stop running away from real life.
Stop running away from your problems, bucko, and rescue your father from the belly of the whale.
I now request a Snek plays of Tactics Advance where you do Merca slides and repeat yourself.
You know, when you first started that sentence, I was gonna say no. But now that you've issued me such an interesting challenge, I kind of feel like I have to now.
I really want to have you and Noodle like tag team this, just so because he has some like really interesting insight into the game.
I'll be honest, I didn't finish the game. I only played it once, and that was like the year after it came out. So I basically would be going into it blind. So having Noodle there would be great.
This game was my first Final Fantasy. I'm not even gonna like apologize or anything for that. But Final Fantasy Tactics Advance was my first Final Fantasy, and it also was what cemented my absolute love of the Blue Mage.
And that's fair.
Because dual wielding Blue Mages just
You played a little bit of Sticks with me though.
I did play a little bit of Six with you, but the first one that I played was Tactics Advance.
Fair.
Okay.
All right.
It was Tactics Advance, and then very quickly 6, and then 1 and 2, were all came very quick in succession. But Tactics Advance was my very first Final Fantasy game, and I 100% support a playthrough of that.
All right. Fair enough. So you guys at home can look forward to that.
If any of you have survived an hour and a half of us talking.
Mostly me narrating my deeply, deeply subtle commentary with no hidden metaphors at all in it.
I mean, my major thought as a writer is to utilize what am I going to use the races for? I don't think about like, oh, I gotta have dwarves, I gotta have, elves, because I don't have those. I think about, I need a character who comes from a background. I need a race of people, a species or whatever, a group of people who are useful for X. Either they're very ancient and they have an incredibly storied history, because they can live to be extremely old. And so even though there's this 10,000-year-old empire, they've been, enslaved by this empire and pretty much the entire time, and it's only been about 3 generations that the entire time of this empire. And so they are well aware of how it works. And even as the original inhabitants basically have all just died out due to the fact that, don't you know that holding yourselves up on just, posting on Faceagram doesn't actually, make babies happen, they are still aware of what happened. And so they have a unique insight into history. Or, an ancient race of craftsmen that, utilize technology because they have to, because they require a very specific environment in order to live. It's just like that. I find that, honestly, in a lot of fantasy now, just we're kind of in a cage of our own devising, and that we're not even thinking about, like, what would be interesting. It's just like, well, I mean, they've always had elves, and no, they haven't, all right? Up until the point that Tolkien happened, elves were like little pixies. They weren't like beautiful, strange, ethereal people with blonde hair and incredibly pale skin who, loved the ocean and trees. And for the record, the entire thing about, just them loving trees is entirely a misread of the elves in Mirkwood. And it's just really frustrating to me that every single time, elves love the trees. Dwarves are all Scotsmen, and they're all drunk, and they all have axes. When just because that was just the way that Gimli was in the movies, not in the books.
Like, John Rhys Davies was, chewing the scenery because he was trying to be funny. That doesn't mean that all dwarves are like that.
I get it works with a certain amount for, like Warhammer, because Warhammer is, once again, Warhammer Fantasy is deliberately, trying to be tongue-in-cheek, over the top. Even Warhammer Fantasy, you can do better. You can do more. And so just, falling back on, well, that's the way it's always been. No, it wasn't, because the only reason why it's that way for as long as it has is just everybody wants to play in Tolkien's sandbox. You can make your own sandbox. It's okay.
Or you can also take elements from that sandbox, twist them around, and have some fun with it, like I chose to do.
Elves are peaceful people. This has been determined by the alchemical press.
Click here to learn more. All right, gentlemen, any other closing thoughts, Master Noodle?
No, not really. You guys have covered most everything, I'd say.
All right. So, thank you for joining us for this almost 2-hour-long lecture and reading something fun Snek threw together. I will be sure to report on our Dungeons the Dragoning game. And you will see a Let's Play where I give libertarian Jordan Peterson's voice to Marka as he goes to kill an awful lot of people in order to make a point. So that should be fun. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me.
You're very welcome.
This has been the Hipster Snek and the Brothers Pugum here for the Tomodachi Bros Podcast Season 3. Look forward to more very soon in the next one.